Will Lucas here, Black Tech, Green Money. I have Dana Loatman here today. She's the executive director of the Virgil Abloh Foundation, where she leads efforts to expand access, opportunity, and equity for underrepresented creatives. With over a decade of experience in the nonprofit and philanthropic sectors, Dana has driven impactful initiatives at the intersection of culture, leadership, and social change. Prior to joining the Virgil Abloh Foundation, she served in senior leadership roles in the Obama Foundation, where she helped shape legacy programs like My Brother's Keeper, which I was a big fan of, the Obama Leaders Initiative, while building multi-million-dollar partnerships with global brands like Nike, Apple, Google, and more. A strategic leader and advocate for systemic change, Dana brings a deep commitment to community empowerment, innovation, and cultivating the next generation of cultural change makers. Welcome, Dana, to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Will. It's such a pleasure to be here with you. Really appreciate you having me.
It's my pleasure. So I want to start here. Like, what is Virgil Abloh's legacy? Define that for me, as you see it.
Such a great question. I mean, I think we see it every day, right? Like, Virgil was a multi-hyphenate. He redefined what it meant to be a creative in so many ways. He was the first Black creative director at Louis Vuitton, the founder of Off-White, the brand that we all know and love. And he was also a DJ, an architect, a designer, an engineer by degree. And so really redefined and reshaped what it means to be a creative. He was the first in many places, but did not want to be the last. And so that legacy for him, when you ask me what is Virgil Abloh's legacy, it really is continuing the work that he had started to continue his story by investing in young creatives, specifically young underrepresented creatives. He believed deeply in elevating Black voices and diverse perspectives. And so that's what our work is fully focused on here at the Virgil Abloh Foundation, continuing that legacy that he started to invest in underrepresented creatives.
What part of that work resonates most personally with you and professionally with you, Dana?
Oh, man. I mean, even in our first pilot program, Abloh Air, I'll share more about it, but every day I see, engaging with young people who are just so passionate around their creative. I think for me, I grew up born in New York, raised in Maryland, the DC area, by an incredible single mother. Have a relationship with my dad, but it was my mother who really, really championed education for me, hard work. And I grew up with dreams and aspirations of being a choreographer. That was my goal. Dance was the passion. Dance was the passion. But really, one, I didn't have mentors in the space that looked like me to show me that this was possible, right? Like, how do you make a career out of dance? How do you sustain? How do you pay for family and finances, in dance and in creative? And so instead of pursuing dance full time, I went to follow in my mother's footsteps. She was a proud graduate of Bowie State University, one of the oldest HBCUs in our country. And I ended up going to Bowie State as well. And there I studied sociology. And so not dance, but I studied sociology. And that's where I got my passions really for investing in our communities and minority communities, and really ensuring that we have the same access that our counterparts have. And so, every day in our work, the work is deeply, deeply personal for me, because as a creative, naturally, but I did not see the path towards that for a sustainable career.
You've had an opportunity to work with humongous personalities: Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, Virgil Abloh, and I'm sure there's others. And I wonder, what about those experiences have prepared you to carry on this legacy or to assist in carry on Virgil's legacy here?
Yeah. Well, it's a great question. And yes, I've had the honor of the lifetime of working with the Obamas, and now in another incredible opportunity and continuing forth the legacy that Virgil started. And I would say there's a couple of things really necessary. One is just leadership, right? Leadership is the ability to really inspire others around a collective mission. I would say values, leading through values, right? Like in all of these names that you mentioned, there's a through line really in seeing everybody as equal, right? And so, and really valuing how do we create more equity and inclusion. And really, I think seeing humanity first and kindness. And so those are values that I really lead with, but collaboration, I will say too, is something that I've learned. No person could do anything, can't change the world by themselves. And so Virgil believed heavily in collaboration, and it's something that I carry forth even from my experience with the Obamas, who also did as well. And so bringing forth unique perspectives across sectors, age groups, backgrounds. And so that's I would say the through line. And a commitment to the mission, right? The work first, young people first. So.
What are the first priorities you have stepping into this role?
Well, one I'll say is to continue to execute and build impactful, transformational creative programs for young underrepresented creatives. So we just launched our first program, Abloh Air. And so that is a 10-month program focused on exposing 17 to 18-year-olds here in Chicago. Chicago's home for us, is headquarters. It was Virgil's home. And so the foundation is headquartered here. The work is global in nature, but we're starting here locally. And so that program is really a huge priority for me right now and for our team. And it really focuses on exposure, access, and opportunity, which are our three pillars of work. And so this program, 10 months, 10 students from all over Chicago, from BIPOC communities, Black, Indigenous, first generation, single parent homes, all go through a transformational experience for 10 months where they came into the program. They went through a rigorous application process where they identified some area of creative passion that they had in a creative area of interest that they were interested in going into. And in the work, in our evaluation, we identified 10 that were superstars. I think over 80 were nominated. And we decided that we would move forward this group. And over the 10 months, they each get a mentor. Virgil believes heavily in mentorship. They each go through a creator series that we host as a part of the program monthly. And this is with top creators from Virgil and Shannon's community, folks like, you'll know names like Grace LaDoja and Alex Sosa, or Benji B and Don C, and just, a lot of folks who have transformed the industry as we know it, and are changing the game and changing the industry as we know it. And they're giving real hard, tangible skills to young people. So whether it's soft skills or hard skills, they're getting the behind the scenes of the industry, whether it's marketing campaigns or they, like Don C, hosted a campaign shoot with the students here in Chicago, and they actually did a campaign for just Don in his store. And so this program, Virgil believed deeply in cultural immersion. And so while he was local in Chicago, he was also in Paris and around the world in so many ways. And so we take the students on a 10-day trip to Paris and London. And during that trip, they learn from Fabian Montique and top photographers like Bafik, and they're actually getting that hands-on experience and behind the scenes of like ateliers for Louis Vuitton, only stuff that like a Virgil Abloh Foundation could do. And so we're not just showing them these experiences, they're getting tangible skills that they can put on their resume. And they're graduating in the next few weeks from the program. And they're all going to college as next steps. Some are studying marketing. Some are looking forward to integrating political science with their photography interest. And so this program really was built on Virgil's quote that a lot of people will know. Everything he did was for the 17-year-old version of himself. And so I have the North Star of leading that program forth and continuing it and growing it and scaling it too. And so I know you touched upon, that was the first program, but we're going to be doing a lot more of that, a lot more of partnerships and resources to young creatives.
Yeah, in taking this over, I imagine, you've got to, be the face of the thing. You got to be on podcasts. You got to raise money. You got to develop relationships with key partners. You got to program things. You got to hire people and lead people and all the things, right? So big title means you do everything, right?
Everything.
And so I want you to talk about, number one, how you learn to lead, number one, and then how this is still a business, even though it's a nonprofit.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's a startup at this stage. And so we're building something that lasts for generations, right? We are doing all of the tasks. And so no
Mm-hmm.
task is too big or too small when you have big vision, especially that, outlives us all. And so uh, learning how to lead really for me is about like how I grew up too, which is like community, right? You don't, like I said, we don't do anything in silos. And so listening to young people, what do they need? What do young people of color feel like there are their gaps that they're facing within the industry? Talking to experts and, like I said, the creators and collaborators of Virgils and friends that know this industry and have had, success while navigating the barriers that are faced in the industry, and really getting out there and elevating the mission of the work. To your point around fundraising, we are actively fundraising. We're seated by a gift from Shannon Abloh, Virgil's wife and our founder. But we have to get out there and ensure that we have the right
Mm-hmm.
resources to bring this big vision to life. And so leading is, I think, really about like hardcore and values and like community, and ensuring that you always have the mission and the vision first and like foremost. And then being able to work backwards from there. Also, what is the strategy? How do we get to that big North Star, which is for us a limitless creative future, which Virgil believed deeply in. And so constantly in the weeds of making sure that we have the right team to succeed, that we have the resources that we need to do this.
Yeah. What does success look like? Especially with Abloh Air, these pilot programs and other objectives that you have. What does success look like?
Yeah. Well, success for us, like I said, it's not just about giving students a great experience, right? There's a lot of programs that do that. For us, we want to give folks transformational experiences that they can tangibly use as they grow into their careers. And so our ultimate goal is to change and to influence the creative sector as we know it. We aim to increase equity and inclusion within the creative sector. And so for us, that is the big vision and the North Star. And so really building out those programs that transform the industry and make way for this next generation of young creatives.
And based on this pilot, you said they got a couple weeks left, right?
Yes,
We
they
got.
graduated May 30th,
I love it.
31st.
What do you think about? What did you learn in this, first iteration, and what do you want to enhance for future iterations and, enhancements for the next programs?
Yes. One, we learned that the students really value the experience, right? Like we're getting, there's stories of, I mentioned there's a young lady in our program who she came into the program passionate around music, right? At the end of the program, now she sees herself with integrated music and fashion. Now she wants to model, and seeing that integration, that things aren't just that siloed. And
Mm-hmm.
that was the goal of the program, which is to expose to all the possibilities, right? Like I said, Virgil was a multi-hyphenate. He didn't box himself into one creative. And so to hear those stories of young people who feel like they gain value from this experience and its influence in their next steps and their next career, that is really something that we learned that, okay, the program works, right? Anytime you're building a pilot, you're learning as you're going and how to indicate where the organization goes in the future and how to design future programs too. And so our students are telling us what they need as they enter into college and early career. And so making sure that they have the resources in this next phase and the community as well, and collaboration, which we know is very necessary, especially with communities of color too.
Yeah. And I know you mentioned, the goal is to, influence the industry. And I think about when you have these visions and you have these goals and you're running pilots, you have like a vision of what the future looks like. This grand vision that maybe the resources aren't there to do it yet today, or the connections aren't there to do yet today, or whatever they are. When you can you paint a picture of at its fullest, version of itself, what this foundation looks like?
Uh, I smile because I get to wake up every day thinking about this. And, right now we're talking about 10 students here in Chicago, right? And we're in the process of executing the next cohort of that here and expanding our programs, whether it's through philanthropy and grant making and ensuring resources go directly to underrepresented creatives. We know that there's barriers to access to resources in the industry for creatives. And so the North Star, I think when I think about that question, we desire for the next couple of years where we're going from that 10 to thousands of young underrepresented creatives who've been impacted by the work of the Virgil Abloh Foundation, whether that's through in-person experiences, our bespoke programs, partnerships and collaborations, or online programs as well. And so really excited to invest in this next generation to change the way the sector currently looks like.
Yeah. And you mentioned, even in your story, you wanted to dance and you're thinking about, how do you make money doing this and all these other things. And these are the creatives. These students are, these young people are. And there's so often when we are creative and we give our creations out into the world, we don't always realize the reward of that, creation and that contribution. So how do you, or do you yet, maybe either question, depending on where you are in this stage, how do you help them develop that business acumen to understand their value in the marketplace?
It's spot on. And this actually touches on your point around, what have we learned within the program? We're learning that even through the experience that the students had on the trip, with them getting tangible, like hard skills, they're working with different collaboration partners like Billionaire Boys Club or Pablo T-shirt Factory. We're learning that there's opportunities to ensure that they understand the business side of the industry so that they're not going into it blindsided. And so even within our programs and the Abloh Air program, we're designing, what does the business of arts look like, right? And giving them that real tangible experience and understanding of the legal side, the tax implications, financials, all of that, the pieces that, folks don't like to shy away from that are necessary to be successful. Yeah.
How does, or maybe a better question is how could, because, you're in the pilot stage and you're launching this thing, which I think is remarkable. How could you scale this? So here's probably a better way to ask this. You talked about this is a global effort ultimately, but it's starting local there in Chicago. And the goal is to scale globally. Are there things that you could do in local communities across the country, across the world, that maybe Dana doesn't have to be there, and one of your employees don't have to be there, but maybe there's like curriculum or something? How do you scale this is my question.
Yeah. Well, I love this conversation because it's about big vision, and scaling is going to happen through partnerships, right? So we look at Virgil actually started the Virgil Abloh Postmodern Scholarship Fund at the Fashion Scholarship Fund. And so that's a great example of the type of partnerships that we look forward to continuing and that we look forward to developing additional ones, right? That scholarship directly gives scholarships and grants to students who are in college, Black students studying fashion. And so that's a way to actually reach additional students at scale. But partnerships and collaborations, whether we've done it through the Royal College of Arts, where Virgil also has a scholarship program, will be tangible examples of the types of programs that we look to expand. But we can't do this work in silo. And so there's a lot of great work happening in the sector already. And so anticipate a lot of collaboration and partnerships to really scale and to reach to that vision of thousands of creatives.
What criteria are used to select these students?
Yeah. Well, all of the students were nominated from local partners in Chicago. We did not want to, there's no need to start from scratch. There's people in the city who are already working with young people. And so we identified partners, whether it was with My Brother's Keeper locally here in Chicago, or Chicago Scholars, or Little Black Pearl and Gray Matter Experience Chicago West Community Center, Yola Cali Arts Mexican Art Center, just to name a few of them that we actually worked with to nominate the students. And so they identified students in their programs who were interested in some form of creative, whether it was fashion, music, design, visual art, you name it. They nominated students for the program. And then the students went through an application process. And then from there, our committee reviewed it. The committee is a group of folks from our board and within Virgil's community as well. And so that's the process that they they came to be within the 10 students for the first cohort.
Yeah. And so I'm a student. I've gone through this program. I've met some of the most incredible people, designers, photographers, models, the whole thing. I've met all of these wonderful people. I've learned a ton. But I'm from a socio, less a social economic background. I don't have all the resources in my family, et cetera, to help me launch. Where do I go? I've been through this program. It was remarkable. I had a great time. What's next?
Yep. So that's exactly where we're focused, right? Like, this won't be a one and done experience. This is a community. And that's something that you'll see kind of when we talk about what is Virgil's legacy. In every conversation with folks who knew him personally, it was about community, right? And so for us, anyone going through the program, we are actively staying in touch with them through their next years in their early career, working with them to identify either internship opportunities or the resources that they need and to be successful. And so one of our students is studying political science and going, I think, to Morehouse, and will plan to continue to do his photography and integrate that with the social justice perspective. And so for us, it's about building that community where they know that they have a resource in the Virgil Abloh Foundation to pursue their dreams within this industry. So they'll be right here with us. And so they've actually already asked to be mentors to the next cohort. And we're like, no, you keep going, And so, the goal is that community and collaboration and, future creative spaces where they know that they can meet peers and collaborate, but also really leverage and continue to utilize the skills and the relationships that they built from this experience. And none of those relationships, their mentors, the creatives, they're all theirs, right? Like, this is not just, they have their contact info, they're able to communicate with them, and knowing this cohort, they're going to run with them. So see what they do.
When Virgil passed, God bless him, this was 2021. So he saw, what happened with COVID. He saw how the world changed post-COVID. But he wasn't here to see how AI is impacting, the creative industries. And so I guess my question is, how does the foundation think about how to stay adaptable and to meet the needs of creatives as the world continues to evolve and change?
Yeah. Well, to your point, exactly. So much has evolved over the last couple of years. And so we believe deeply in innovation. And at the core of everything with the Virgil Abloh Foundation is creativity, right? And so Virgil believed in that innovation and adaptability in a changing world. And so we're staying, close to ensuring that things are modern, right? This gets to that real ethos of what he believed in, that postmodern. And so for us, we're always willing to evolve and continue to make sure that the work is at, the cutting edge and relevant to this next generation. And so really, I think it'll be a lot of listening to young people and how do they receive information, or, what's the best way to communicate. And so to your point around AI, you have to use these modern tools to reach young people directly. So.
What advice do you give to people aspiring to be in leadership in nonprofit sector? You found your way, having worked directly with Valerie Jarrett and, again, the big names that you've worked with. But what is it about people who find success in nonprofit that you would like to lend as advice?
Yeah. Well, I would say hard work. Like, you mentioned a name like Valerie Jarrett, like that is, you have to show up, right? Like, nothing is handed to you. And so hard work and commitment to the mission, right? And so it's not always about you ever, right? Like, it is about the work and about who you're seeking to serve and the communities that you're looking to impact. So always keep that first. And then I would say integrity, right? Like, in a nonprofit, we have a lot to be accountable to. You're accountable to resources from funders. There's 990s at the end of the year, and you're accountable to the mission and to the people that you're serving. And so that integrity is key. And then I would really say mentorship. Seek guidance. And this is something that is very deep to the mission and the vision for the Virgil Abloh Foundation is that you surround yourself with people who might be smarter than you, and you're willing to learn from them, right? And so I think that willingness and eagerness to learn and to serve and to grow while being committed to the mission and maintaining the values first, I think it'll get any of us far within our careers and within the creative industry. So that would be my advice.
Yeah.
In the nonprofit industry.
For sure. Yeah, and we talked about, this is a startup and you wearing many hats. You do all the big things, you do the little things, you do all the things.
Yeah.
And in that regard, you've got to find a balance between the creative aspects of leading this, charge and the administrative aspects of doing this. Like, and not, from a 30,000 foot view, but actually tactically every day. How do you balance that work? And so what are you using? What tools are you using? How do you balance, are you doing these sorts of things on Mondays and Tuesdays and these sorts of things on Wednesdays and Fridays, and we do something else on Thursday? Like, how do you do it?
Yeah. Well, it's a great question. I would say I'm not right now doing this thing on Mondays and Tuesdays, this thing on Fridays. Maybe one day we'll get there. But at this stage, I love organization. And so I use tools like Asana. Those are, necessary for me to project manage. Lot of meetings and a lot of calls with our team. Like we're built, in the early days, we have, a series of consultants and partners who are helping us to get the work started as we're aiming to hire later this year and really build out the long-term team for the foundation. And then I have a great partner in Ati, who is our chief creative officer and who was Virgil's, he was his chief of staff and his assistant for years. And so from the creative side, we really get to balance that business, the nonprofit business side with the creative side daily, so that I could really shore up during this critical time that we're building out the infrastructure and the operations and the fundraising and the staffing to be successful. So again, early days, it's all hands on deck for every task, no task too big or too small, but a lot of project management and time management, right? Like we have to ensure that as leaders, we're taking care of ourselves and while still able to show up for the work daily. And so, that's how I do it. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned the phrase a minute or two ago, and you talked about this conversation having big vision. And I that has been ringing in my head since you said it. And I think about so often we have young people who have this particular worldview. They're young. They haven't had all the experiences in the world. So they see, I want to be the designer, but they don't realize they can own the house. They see I want to be in the NBA, but they don't realize they can own a team or a league. So how does your work directly and the foundation's work more globally help people, creatives, young creatives, embolden their ideas, make them bigger?
Yeah. Well, this comes down to our key pillars, which are that exposure, access, and opportunity, right? Like you have to see it to believe it, right? Even in the story of Virgil and his legacy, right? We're talking about the first Black creative director at Louis Vuitton, but also the founder of Off-White simultaneously. And so for us, we want young people to see what's possible so that they can actually pursue it. And so a lot of the programming will be about them meeting mentors and people who are in the space already so that they know what's possible, and then providing and exposing them and connecting them to the resources so that they can actually pursue those dreams. And so that's really how we're doing it, through that mentorship and that exposure and that access, so that they know how to turn these dreams into reality.
Yeah, and we're talking about somebody who unfortunately isn't here anymore. And so I think about, how do you instill that desire to build legacy in the next generation of creatives? So they're not just thinking about what's trendy today. Again, we were talking about work that Virgil did years ago, and it still permeates today. So how do you think about that, and how do you instill that desire to build something that lasts beyond their own, breath?
Yeah, it's funny. On the trip, we had there was a panel talk that Sammy Jangier and Clint Cortez, who's from Cortez, and a few others as well. Like there was a panel where they talked about legacy. One of the students asked about I have this passion with my art, and I have a hard difficulties letting it go. And the panel, Clint actually gave him advice on archiving, and Virgil archived everything. And so that's a big part of the work that Adi is doing with us, is the archives for Virgil, so that young people can learn from that legacy and learn, what was the process to the works. And so really that story, that Clint gave him that advice is to say, share your work with the world, and like that legacy lives on, and just make sure that you're, capturing it as you go. So I think that archiving and teaching them the importance, what does it mean to have an archive as a creative and a portfolio, right? And so these are the skills that we're teaching them.
Yeah. And finally, I asked you a different version of this question, and I kind of want to ask this in a different way. And, the work that you're doing, it has to mean something to you. And you talked a lot about how, what resonated with you with this work, but I'm interested, like, what is, if you have it, nailed down, like, what is your personal mission and how does this work align with it?
Yeah. Well, you'll see, I think this is a through line in any, like, my full career experience, right? I am committed to equity and inclusion and advancing communities of color, right? And so that is the heart of everything that I do. And so when I met Shannon Abloh in 2023, where she hosted a summit, which was really focused on building what the future vision for the Virgil Abloh Foundation would be. And it was a series of folks across sectors, creative, foundations, philanthropy, partners and corporations and collaborators from Virgil's community, young people. What I saw there in that room inspired me, and it lit up what I call, my baby, my mission baby, which is that like ability to continue forth legacy and leave something in this world that lives beyond us, but lives beyond us with purpose and mission that is about advancing and making the world, easier for this next generation of people who look like me. So I would say that's the commitment and the through line in my mission and my North Star in all the work that I do.